shame on the vendor, shame on the dealer. We both do the same damn thing. Literally, we show up, we say, okay, well, it is what it is. They like it or they don't, and they'll leave if they want to. What? You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're not building that relationship. We look at a lot of different things, but how do you measure success? What would make this a successful venture? What are your goals? What's your pulse? What's going on in your store? All those different things. And oftentimes we just miss that.
Ever feel like your dealership's vendors are just another expense instead of true partners? Well, today we are uncovering hidden cost, overlooked data, and flawed beliefs that could be holding your business back. Join me, Brooke Furniss, and NADA veteran Joe Akers, as we reveal how to find vendor partners who grow with you and not against you. Joe, welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, we've done a few live shows together. This is the first one we've actually done as a full episode. So when you sent over the topic, I go, man, we might get a few Brooke words going on here because this is something that you and I hold pretty dearly to our hearts. So we'll see if we can make it through.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Now, I love this topic, but two, like with your experience as an NAD moderator and you work with dealerships nationwide, you have such a unique perspective on how dealers can make smarter decisions about their vendor relationships. So the question then has to be asked, what is the real cost of working with vendors whose goals don't align with dealership visions? And then how can those dealers spot those red flags before it's way too late?
It's funny. I think that, the challenge is, all the vendors, they're tasked with making a profit. So their goal is, they've created a product. It can be a great product, but it should help the dealer improve some type of part of their operation. The vendors are great salespeople. Oftentimes they miss the point in the fact that they need to show the dealer why they need this product. They need to educate the dealer, and the education piece gets lost somewhere in translation. The dealer needs to not only understand what the product does, but understand the language that they're using. We use a ton of acronyms, and every industry does. I'm about to say, auto has the market on the most acronyms, but there are certainly a lot. We add in the digital space to all of that, and it gets very confusing. The dealer just wants to sell more cars, so we'll write another service RO. And the vendor just wants to sell another contract. So somewhere those two butt heads against each other. They don't really grow together. And I think the challenge is that we lose, no one wins. We're trying to sell a product and, randomly dealers sold stuff and they don't know what they have. They get a big report, this big shiny report, and it says all these things and it only says positives. And, they're like, well, I guess it's good. And, the vendor doesn't work out. Then, oh, well, they just move on because another vendor or one of their salespeople or somebody in the staff says, oh, well, this product is failing. We don't know why it failed. We don't even know that it failed. It's in reality because there were never any goals established, and we're not speaking the same language even. And so that makes it very, very challenging.
There's so much to unpack with what you just said there. I'm like going through the whole reason I started my company is I was in the dealership and got so sick and tired. People coming in, they're like, you're up 10%. I was like, no, we're not. The entire OEM is down. Every brand is down, and somehow we're up 10%. Like, no, there's no way. And my onboarding is quite robust, to say the least. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Not that I want to put someone through pain and agony and drive them to drinking. That's what it takes to understand, like, what does success look like to you? It may just, at the end of the day, I'm guessing more or less, usually I get is, I want to sell more vehicles. I want to move more metal. I want more people embodying in the service lane, more dollars per RO. But there's more than that. Like, I was working with a dealer, and their whole thing was they wanted to reach a certain award. Well, the other one's like, I don't care if we make money as long as I beat my competitor. Okay, how you tailor stuff is way different based on all of those scenarios. So really understanding what it is that is success for the dealer, and then rowing the boat in the same way. And if you've got so many, in this case, vendors that are just ripping people apart, like that's not a partner. There's a big difference. And to your point about the selling, like that is something that drives me bonkers. One of the many things that drive me bonkers, but their whole job is to sell you. Just as you're trying to sell a vehicle or sell whatever. Our job at that point is to say, okay, what questions do I need to ask to understand that if this actually does align with my people, process, and product? But so often that gets overlooked. And even from a vendor, I know you're trying to sell something, but if you're a true partner, understand that as well. Like, is this really the best fit for the dealership? Because it may not be. And so that's just really ask those questions.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a I don't know, it's a really big one for me. But no,
Don't ask those
no,
questions.
no,
Shame on the vendor, shame on the dealer. We both do the same damn thing. Literally, we show up, we say, okay, well, it is what it is. They like it or they don't, and they'll leave if they want to. What?
mhm,
We're not building that relationship. Start with what's important to you. What
yeah,
we look at a lot of different things, but how do you measure success? What would make this a successful venture? What are your goals? What's your pulse? What's going on in your store? All those different things. And oftentimes we just miss that.
yes, that is so true. And really understanding like what that is. And it's different for, I'll say by and large, there's can be a very generic answer that a lot of dealerships will say, but a lot of times it's not that. And so then adapting accordingly to say, okay, this isn't, I also say when you're trying to say that they give you a pretty report, that one will lead me to drinking. I just plead with everybody. If that pretty report is some report that you have to log into the ABC products system, I would be a little leery of that. I've seen too many times where those numbers get inflated royally, to say the least. So have a measuring stick for portions of what you're doing that can be Google Analytics for, if it's set up correctly. But if you're running Amazon ads, you're not going to find it in GA4. So understand, okay, where am I going to get this information? And is it accurate information, or is there some bias involved to make these numbers look just a little bit better than what they really are?
Honestly, I mean, have you ever seen one of those reports show a negative impact or show any kind of negativity? It's always positive. And the reality is, you know, we set a goal, we set some measurement, and we achieved it or we didn't. It can't always be positive. We have to learn
No.
from those negative mistakes happen. We decided we're going to try this. It didn't work. Okay, let's move on. Let's try something else. But if it's all positive, then why would we ever change? I guess
Yep.
maybe that's the why the report reads that way. I don't know, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
Well, case in point, so this is going back, we had an election season last year, and I was going through a few of these proprietary dashboards, and I just go, so I want to make sure we're on the same page here. Your report over here that's nice and pretty shows that the dealer is up significantly. Their views are up, SRP, VDP, click, every metric's up. If I go into Google Analytics and look at any report that is not biased, it shows a 180-degree difference, like not even close to. I go, so explain to me, and it took a minute. Like I've been on enough these calls, and some of them will like, oh yeah, there's something wrong with our reports. Okay, well I appreciate you admitting that. You're not the one that built the report, but I understand that. But there are too many times that, and I've been in that position where I was on the other end of being the vendor, that I went in trusting what a report said from the company from who I worked, even after doing my due diligence and being reassured, oh, this will work, to find out that those numbers were not even remotely accurate. And that was that like my aha moment of like, no, no more. And that was as a vendor. Like there's no way I'm going to hold that above I'll say a normal barometer, which whatever that's going to be, whether it's chief or whatever it's going to be. So yes. So when you're looking at when dealers are looking at vendors or looking at more than just a vendor, but an actual partner who's going to be with them for 5 to 10 years, how do they go about choosing that actual partner that they're going to be long term for them?
I think that 5 to 10 years is a pipe dream. I mean, it's a great dream, but I think it's a pipe dream. But realistically, I mean, the dealers I work with, they suffer every time the representative gets promoted or demoted or changed, and all the vendor partners, they all have the same goal. I mean, they really want to help the dealer. However, there's a disconnect because if I lose my representative who, I knew them, they knew about our store, they had our identity down, and now I have someone new, we don't start over and say, hey, tell me about your store. Tell me, what are your goals? What do you expect to have from this relationship? We don't ask those questions. We literally just say, ah, they already know us, we know them, let's just keep on moving. But they aren't aware of all the different things that are going on. They don't have, their finger on the pulse of the store. They don't know that they're out of used cars and they have trouble getting trades, or this particular model doesn't move in their store. And so the strategies don't match up with the real need. And we don't start over. I think every time that rep changes, there should be a new onboarding. We call it onboarding light, if you will, but that we kind of start over. In store, we make the same mistakes. In store, we don't have a representative in most stores that is the go-to contact who organizes the onboarding, the meeting, what should be in that report, what's important to the store and their GM and their owner. Those should be all known to the vendor, but we don't communicate that either. We show up at a meeting half-assed. We got a report that's just shiny gloss, and we don't ask any questions because we're embarrassed to even ask those questions, because we'll be called out that you don't understand that acronym. You don't understand the why this is important or a good thing. And so it's just silly. So I think that it all comes down to communication. It's like you're in a relationship, truly in a relationship, but this is with your vendor, right? And the pros and the cons and the challenges, the weaknesses and strengths, and together you come up with a plan that's going to make your store better and make sure that the goals are tied to what the store's goals are, not the vendor's goals. I could care less what the vendor's goals are. The goal should be tied to whatever the dealer needs, because they're the one paying. And shame on them for not asking for those things, because they assume the vendor just knows because they're more adept at this topic. But, that's not the right way of approaching it in my mind. I mean, I think ultimately they really need to, dial it back and start to think about, what they want to accomplish.
Amen. And I wonder sometimes if the reason we don't do that is, one, communication at a company level, but number two is we do have some turnover in our industry, like any. Sometimes we have more. No wonder if it's like just not trying to be politically correct there. I was like, we have a shit ton of turnover, but if there's like, hey, I don't want to keep asking the same question because it's just going to point out a quote unquote flaw that we can't keep our people, or the people are getting promoted, which is great. But I can tell you that it is so difficult, whether it's, hey, a lot of turnover, or, hey, we've had this person as our performance manager for 17 years, love them to death, and then they get promoted. You're like, oh, and the new person that comes in is just not as good, even though they're trying to hand off. It's really clunky on how it does that. I will even say, like, when a new person comes on board, whether it's vendor or whatever, I try to really do sit down and talk to them and say, okay, what is it that you want to see? What is it that, do you, simple things like going back to communication, do you prefer text, email, or phone calls? Like, which one do you prefer? Because I could sit there and get mad that, oh, my dealer hasn't answered my email. Well, if you've been in the dealership, they're getting 300 emails a day and they're getting like another 100 phone calls. So maybe email's not the best way to do that. Now, if you need a paper chain, that's a total different story. But have that even with the vendors of like, hey, how do you best communicate with us? What's the best for you? You're traveling a lot, maybe it's text. But I think a lot of people forget to ask those questions.
No, you're right. You add to that challenge that the best new products are usually grow a small database of dealers, and then they get bought up by the bigger guy. And so all of a sudden that product changes, the results change, because no longer is it, the same design, to have a different staffing. Everyone's been moved around to new roles and things like that. And we're dealing with, one more change. It's not the same product because, it's got different ownership. They have different goals for them. And, the dealer is struggling. Well, it was great. And now all of a sudden isn't. And we lose it. They kind of lose their identity sometimes when they get wrapped up in these big roles. And it's happened, throughout my entire career. I've seen, these shifts where, oh, they are owned by them, and now they're owned by them. And now, let's keep an eye on what's going to happen. We've seen, website providers. We've seen, CRM providers, DMS providers, you name it. There's always a constant shift, especially for very good products.
And that's the thing is like you can love the product and let's say it's acquired slash merged. And so now you have two people that have an CEO of this company, CEO of company B. Which way you going? And that's got to be another thing from a top on down of like, okay, what do we do here? Because they could both be good products, or one's a great product, one's like mid grade at best. But at the end of the day, is the customer is going to suffer because you all need to have a communication to say which way are we going. Otherwise, you've got people once again rowing boats in different directions, and you're tipping the boat at that point. So yeah. Okay, so what's your advice for dealers when they hear about about accountability? So often is that we go straight to, hey, I'm going to point fingers that the campaign didn't perform. So when dealers are looking at that, and let's say it is actually on the vendor this time, how can they ensure accountability without damaging the relationship with their vendor partner?
It's tough. I mean, if you identify what the needs and the goals are initially, then you can work together and know that every campaign's not going to function the way you had hoped. That's not how it works. Customers do what they're going to do. We have a theory that this is going this new product's going to work, this new car, this whatever, this delivery, this technique, this means of communication. And the customer says, no, I want it the other way. We're different. And you have to be different. You have to be able to willing to accept that and, and shift. Um, Internally, I think each of the stores, they, and I always like to recommend that each of the stores have someone inside that can help bridge that gap, right? So they're their pro in house. Someone they can trust because they're on their payroll. That you know they help translate in some cases. They help establish some guidelines that what's important, what's not. They can help ask the questions that maybe aren't being asked right now because we don't want to embarrass ourselves or we don't know what the right question to ask is. And I hired a vendor to be the pro, and the pro should be able to tell me, well, this is what we're supposed to do because that's what you do. And I don't know that that's the right strategy. Just everyone's doing it. What's the old adage? Everyone's jumping off a bridge. You don't jump off the bridge. We, especially in marketing work, in each one of these stores, you have to be a little bit unique. You have the same products that are 5, 10, 20 miles away. How do you make yourself different, right? So you're branding yourself as being different in some way. Make sure that you're all on the same page of what that is and how to make sure that message gets across with your vendor. And we miss it. We do it on the first meeting perhaps, or on a filled box on a form you had to fill out, and that was done by the GM, and it didn't establish really who you were. And we never make a change. We never talk about it again. And you're constantly changing, right? My staff got younger. My cars got different. I added a franchise. I opened a car wash. I have a BDC. I didn't have a BDC. I go, whatever it happens to be, you've changed. We added a commercial. We closed it. We added extra bays. We closed. We have a quick lane. We don't have a quick lane. We shift. Dealers are very good about shifting given parameters of their environment. However, we don't always communicate as well as we should to try and help ourselves. And so having someone in-house that can kind of help you analyze, do the due diligence, make those extra phone calls, have the extra meeting, interview other vendors to see if there's a better mousetrap. I mean, I was always I like something shiny, well, let's try it, bring it in, we'll try it, I can always cancel it, but I wanted to try something different. And that was the try and being unique, try and be a little different, have something different that someone else didn't. And it's challenging, but you have to have someone that's on your side that, can kind of protect you too. I'm going to say, hey, Brooke, what do you think about this? We're thinking about doing this. Oh, well, we tried this just last year.
Yeah.
I mean, because unfortunately, even the GM changes over, right? The only one that's not changing over, well, in most cases, is the owner. And even sometimes they change over, right?
Yes.
And so, as those shifts happen, your identity changes. You different people on the tower, people in the lane. You need to let the consumer know. Maybe you've changed tactics. or you want to because the other ones weren't working.
Yeah, and I will say as well, like for me, it's really telling when I have a partner versus a vendor because a partner's gonna be like, hey, I don't mind that Brooke's on all the calls. I don't mind if I take advertising A, agency A, and B, we're all gonna be on the same call together. Because at the end of the day, we all should be serving the client last I checked, and that is the dealers. So if you've got vendors that refuse to allow don't get me started on access, but review not allow access to certain things or ownership, or no, they can't be on the call with us. Well, but if that's the case, then no, we're not all on the same page. Now we're playing a telephone game of what I interpret of what I believe you're running, but now I've got this ad running with some message. I've got another ad over here running with a message B, and I've got nothing over here, message C, and nobody's talking to each other. And it's too often that it is this fragmented advertising or fragmented process that we can't quite get our arms around because no one wants to play ball with each other. It's like, no, we're all serving the name on the building. That's who we should be serving. And if they're not serving, you might want to look at somebody else. I mean, just yeah, that's. But I also say is that in my line of business, that I know in yours, is a lot of times a vendor gets blamed unnecessarily. So I'm looking at this thing like, oh man, your ad copy's great, your ad's great, it's going to the right landing page. Once they get to the site, we've got some issues. So whether it's maybe if the website still looks great, it's once it gets to the CRM. Okay, let's talk about process because right now you guys are closing 2% of those leads. What's going on? Everything else is lining up. This is it. Let's hold the mirror up and have the conversation about your baby's ugly, and you guys need to work on your process versus blaming other people, stroking a check to make something go away.
Right. Well, it's all covered up. I mean, the best marketing can bring them, millions of clients, and if the other side doesn't finish the job, so to speak, then it's still going to fail. You're not selling cars. It's not because of the lead count, but we're going to blame somebody because we can't blame ourselves, and we have to, but someone should, right? You have to look at the full picture, and wouldn't it be great if that was part of that conversation? Most vendors, you mentioned another something that's distracting me at the moment, but most vendors, they don't ask you what's your lead count. What are your close ratios? What kind of leads are you performing best with? How many customers come in a lane? I mean, how many buyers do you have? Is that too many? Have you how are you training your staff? What's your process? All those types of things to try and help the results. I understand that, maybe they're just a marketer and things like that. But if they're not getting the results, then it doesn't matter. You're going to get all the leads you want, or all the communication, or all the traffic to your site, and you're not doing anything with it. And that's a big problem. But the other thing that you mentioned that was irritating me, is access. Let's be transparent. At this day and age, come on, we have to be transparent. It is time to literally stop the BS and start sharing data with the dealer. It's their data. It's not proprietary. Everyone does the same damn thing. Literally have to say, hey, this is it. They'll hold me accountable. What are you afraid of, Mr. Vendor? No one's stealing anyone's concept or idea. It's been around for years.
Been around for 20 years.
Why are we still debating the same things? I mean, it's all about delivering on your process. It's about using the data properly, maybe maximizing the data you have. But we all have the same data. It's just a matter of how are you using it. It's just silly. But I continue to hear it. Oh well, yeah, they don't give me access. I can have view access to my GA4 account. What are you talking about?
I can't change anything, but I can look at it. It's pretty.
And if you're a vendor out there and you're doing that, why? There is no reason to. Be transparent for the dealer, because there are other vendors that are willing to, and they will be true partners where you're just another paycheck and you're just trying to collect a check from them until they fire you, because that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, you have to shift. And we're seeing some dealers start to shift, which is great, but not everyone. There's still those players out there that refuse because that's the guidelines they're getting. And I think it's a failing message. I really do.
That's like any of my clients that come on board. The very first thing I do is like, do you have a property that you 100% own and control, not so-and-so company made it for you. You have view access that has metrics and key events, conversions, whatever, key events that are turned on that make them look really, oh, I have 100% engagement. No, you don't. And so more times than not, I would say probably 95% of the time is that they don't have one that they own. And so it's going through and doing that and explaining, here's the reason why. Because right now, any data that's coming into you is 100% skewed in somebody else's favor. And it can be one of two ways. Either, depending on how it's set up, as you know, it can be skewed in this direction, but more times than not, it's going to be skewed into the company's favor, not the dealer's favor, because you don't know. So really having that hard discussion. And then, I mean, man, I think you and I could go on for days about the joys of people not granting access. And I've got story. That is definitely a drinking story, 100%, which I'm pretty sure we've done at some conference. So we were looking at all the things, the data points, but there's a lot of things that get overlooked. So in your mind, what's the most underutilized data point dealers should be asking their vendors for, but they're not currently, so they can turn that into actionable insights?
I think it's a challenging perspective. I think that I'd like them to be very targeted and simplistic, but identify who they are from a data perspective. So if let's take something as simpler as sessions per key event or something like that. Establish who you are, given the current processes you're having, the current marketing, current website platform, where you're directing the traffic, because all those things would affect it, right? I'd establish who you are, and then make a change and then track the results of that change. So if I want to change sessions per key event, I'm not changing the direction of the traffic, but I'm changing the message of the traffic, so I'm getting more engagement, and I'm measuring the engagement on those different paths. Perhaps I want to focus on getting more customers to book appointments online. So then for my service department. So then I'm changing my ad to focus on that message and getting them down on the page. But not only that, but show them how, perhaps. Maybe it's added a video to that explains how to do the process to make it easier. So I shift from phone calls to online bookings, or whatever that process is, but something deeper in the weeds that is something specific about them that is measurable. Because if it's not measurable, I think why are we even talking about it? I want it to be something concrete. And then if I decide, well, I'm still not getting the results I want, maybe I need to change that process, that page, the results on that, and look at changing my SEO, or maybe I change my website platform, or maybe I change that page and how it's designed and what color the buttons are, or whatever it happens to be. But instead of saying, what are those key items that people are missing, I think the data's there, but we don't analyze the data. We just say it's up or down. And I love trends, right? I want them all going this way, right? However, at the same time, we don't really measure, we don't do the math on it. It's like, I've been doing a lot of different exercises with stores about, BDPs for sale, or BDP for new versus used by advertising marketing type. So who are you in your store, given not changing anything? Now, how do I improve that number? What does it take me to sell another car? How much do I need to spend? What's that spend relationship to look like? And so as I start to break down those numbers, then I can try and identify who they are. So I can then maybe, if I don't like who they are because I'm not selling enough cars or not getting enough, parts sales or whatever it happens to be, then I can change that relationship and trying to manipulate the end result by making various changes, whether on site or in marketing or some other method of communication, right?
Yeah. You brought up a good point about the VDP thing. I know I've talked about this a few times, but when I go in and I see that we're directing traffic, or a company is directing traffic to SRP, and I go, okay, just so you're aware, this is the ripple effect when that happens. If it's on a single vehicle, now you're telling the customer to go look at all these vehicles, so your engagement metrics are going to look higher than what they really are, because you're asking the customer to complete more tasks if they would have just dropped them on the VDP. mean, VLAs, PMAXs, I've seen those directed to SRPs. I was like, what are you doing? But yet the metrics thought, look awesome. Like, oh, look at all the stuff we're getting. I'm like, yeah, but the customer would have got the same thing and they can go to another site and get the same information in half the time. So look at that as well, like what the metrics are telling you.
Absolutely. Unless it's like a search ad, where I'm just talking about, make model. And then make model shouldn't land on a VDP. It should land on an SRP. So why are we sending half that traffic to a VDP? So we don't, what's the strategy? And then we don't discuss what that strategy is because, well, it's on the report and sometimes that vendor representative can't even explain the report. They can just read off of it. And, so that makes it challenging too.
So education.
Education is the key, and, I think that there's lots of opportunities for dealers to arm themselves or educate themselves. Having someone in-house is huge, right? So someone on your side that can break down your numbers, tell you, what's performing, what's not, what's up, what's down, what's good, what's bad, how the market shifts are doing, what your comparison versus last month is, and all those types of things. At the same time, educate yourself and your staff. There's free trade. If you ask the question to your vendors, they would love to tell you. But realistically, we don't ask the questions. Say, hey, can you explain this to me? Or why are we doing this? Or, what does this mean? And then we add to that, there's free training by vendors and some great vendor partners out there that put out free and paid training online, right? Every week they're posting something, these educational, podcasts like you do. I mean, if there's information in there that you can use in your store and say, hey, that's a good question I should ask my vendor. I wonder why I'm not doing this or that. Add to that, NADA has a digital boot camp that we run multiple times a year, which teaches the basics of digital marketing. And so you could look at something like that. I run multiple 20 groups that are all digital based. And in those cases, when you're moderating these groups, it's about whatever the dealers want to talk about. And we talk about the power of the room at NADA. We have 20 minds together that can all share experiences and therefore together get better because we've all experienced something different in different market. And now we have 20 people I can call with a problem. We've all experienced various vendors. What's your experience been? Who do I talk to? How do I get help? What happens, if there's an issue, or what's working and what's working really well. And so all of a sudden you have this audience that you can share with that you're not worried about giving away, the company's secrets on your secret sauce, if you will, on how you do business. But I can share because they're in non-competitive markets. And now I can kind of open up my idea bank to, what may work in their market, maybe something you hadn't thought about trying. And those ideas are huge, right? And you'll have great conversations about, what people are trying because we're all innovative, but maybe we just don't know where the next innovation is coming from. Maybe you're in a rut and well, that one didn't work and I don't know what to do. Well, here's an opportunity for you to talk with, fellow dealers who are all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to sell another car, get another RO, sell another part, buy another used car, sell a used car, whatever it happens to be. We're all in the same business. We all do the same things. We just all do it slightly differently. And, this is huge.
And I'll say as well, like even when you get I'll say the non-competitive dealers together, you and I were speaking. It was yours. It was actually Dodds that you took over in Canada, and there was an example of, hey, sometimes you may feel like the report you have is great. Unbeknownst to you, there's actually a better way to measure that. Or, hey, whatever it is, we set it up. We thought it was set up correctly. It's not set up correctly, but you didn't know until you started talking to other people and saying, oh, wait, yours looks like this. How come mine doesn't look like this? We're the same brand. Like, why is it not looking the same way? So then you're able to collaborate together and grow from that and learn from that and then have better input coming into you to make more sound decisions and more calculated decisions versus I thought it was set up correctly, but it wasn't set up correctly.
Right. Or it could have been set up better, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just an improvement. It's not good or bad, but Maybe it's easier to get there. It's easier to download. I can automate it, whatever it happens to be. The information is cleaner, and there's more comparison or whatever happens, to work out.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So we talked about this at the very beginning that we have turnover in this industry quite a bit. So when a dealership is now changing vendors or switching vendors to hopefully go from a vendor to a partner, no one wants to undertake this task. We know it, but what's your advice for dealers to navigate this transition as effectively as possible?
We all dread change. There's no doubt, and change is difficult. The worst one being the DMS change, right? Because it's our bias at everything in there, and all of a sudden now we have to change how we do everything. Followed by the CRM, which is super challenging. We have to move all the minds of everyone else. But I think the key for all of that stuff is planning. Having one person responsible, that they're heading up this change, that they're the leadership that's going to drive this change and have it happen. But so many times what happens is we don't prepare for it. We show up the day of the conversion and but we're also doing business. So we're still selling cars and whatever. Oh, I don't have time for that training right now. And all of a sudden, half the staff isn't trained. We didn't spend our time. We had a rep in the store the whole week, and he was just eating McDonald's down in the corner office. And so we never got that training we needed. We don't know what's required because each software package has its own little challenges, if you will, some ways you have to do things in order for them to work properly. And if we're not prepared to do that, then you're kind of really stuck. But so I think you have to do the prep work. The more prep work you do, the better that transition is going to be. If you can do some training with prep work and require your staff and make sure that they get it done, you'll be better off. And then you have to be there the entire time and make sure that everyone has time to do the training. There can't be, I've got to go sell this car. I know that you want to sell the car. That's great. And we all want to sell that one more car. However, make that car wait an hour, a day, whatever it happens to be, so you make sure you don't miss this install training time, because that's going to be more important long term than that one car deal that you can have another salesperson sell, split the deal, do whatever you need to do to make sure it makes sense for your store, that you get the install time that you need. Because we skip it every time. Every time a new DMS, 17 people didn't have the training. Nope. They're gone. And what do we do now? Now you have to train them, and you don't know how, because you're still trying to figure it out. Because whatever they told you, what do you retain of what they told you? 10%?
Yeah.
And so I've got 90% still to figure out. How am I going to train someone? It's not possible. And then online versus in person is a little bit different. It works. Absolutely. However, am I more likely to ask the question I really need to ask is, why can't I push this button? Or why am I seeing something different than what you're showing on screen? Or it could be simple stuff, but the simple stuff's the most important, because now I get more comfortable. As soon as the staff gets comfortable, then we can start to make progress. But they have to be comfortable, and they're going to be uncomfortable because it's change and it's terrible, right? They've been doing it the same way for 10 years. I'm not going to like this. It's there, and if God forbid one thing is wrong, you have anarchy, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but if I push this button to email and it doesn't email, this thing's broken. It's the worst. It's not using it ever. We're never touching it. And literally stores will change 6 months later because we never did the training in the first place. It's imperative that you take the time and you make those efforts. It doesn't work otherwise.
Amen. And so Don again. So Don and I were talking over the weekend, and was that matter? The weekend last week, whatever. And he goes, "Hey, do you have anything for what people should do if there's turnover?" I was like, actually, when I was in the dealership, I asked all the way around. No one had a checklist of things that should be done if you fire, you change vendors, you have a new employee onboarding, or someone is moved on to greener pastures. So I just started creating a list. And he goes, this is crazy. Like, so we started going through this whole thing, but it is nuts to me how often this happens where we don't take the time to, when that switch happens. I've been in the dealership when this has happened as well. I've seen other things happen. And because of that, I was able to create this list. But I've seen multiple times with the DMS here where the buyer and seller have just said, well, here's the information from the DMS. And then the buyer's like, yeah, I don't need any of that sold data. And I would come in like literally 24 hours before because they didn't tell me about it. I'm like, wait, did anybody get the sold data here? Oh, that's we don't need that. Well, what? That is, how do you not want that? But I have heard that so many times. Where last second they come in and something so crucial like sold data is no one's even talked about it. Hey, when digital retail in 2020 took off, that was probably the biggest complaint was that F&I has no idea that there's some DR tool that's been put on the website. Oh, salespeople. Wait, we have what is that? Another acronym? I don't know what it is. So alerting all parties that, hey, this change is happening, and then have a game plan. I mean, that is the biggest thing. I've seen, as I'm sure you, way too many things have went sideways because of it. So.
Yeah. And the worst part is the things that go wrong, they're the simple stuff.
Yep.
They could have been solved if we spent 10 minutes in the training, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when the employee says, hey, well, this doesn't work, the one person next to him that went through the training says, oh, no, you remember you have to just push this button. Okay. And it solves it before it gets blown out of proportion.
Yep.
Because it doesn't take much.
No, it doesn't.
In the dealership space, it's a big rumor mill. I mean, one story. I mean, we love to tell stories, and they start to get bigger and bigger. So you don't want that escalating. You got to stop it real quick.
So true. Oh, just reminiscing a lot of good times there, or bad times, I want to look at it. So,
Yeah.
Well, Joel, we are at the point of the show where we're going to jump into the lightning round with you. So for those that are watching, you can see his QR code below here. But for those that are listening in podcast land, how can they get in touch with you and how can they find you?
Yeah, so the easiest way, you can get in touch with me through LinkedIn. I'm out there. You can email me. No problem. I'm on the road about half the month, so I'll get back to you as soon as I am able. And I'm happy to, my objective, this is kind of my second career. I spent 30 plus years or 30 years in the store. And now I get to help dealers, so I get to do the best part of the dealership operations side is work with dealers every day and help them succeed. And so that's my goal, to help educate in any way I can, help out where I can, and help find them, and help them be successful. So
love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. So name the show's Facts Not Feelings. So it can be in professional life or your personal life. How are you distinguishing facts from feelings?
I like data, prove it to me. Do we have UFOs outside, or are they all drones? Or, I don't know yet, but it's an interesting discussion, certainly. But I like to see, a video sells it better than a picture, then sells it better than a word, right? Mm-hmm. And the key is not reacting to the word and then passing on this false information before it's needed, and make sure that that everything's shared out there. So
I agree full-heartedly in everything you just said. So, all right, let's round up. What is one thing that most people wouldn't know about you?
I have 6 300 games. So I used to think I was going to chase the tour or something like that. I realized there were much more money in the automotive industry. And so I shifted gears, and I still bowl to this day, but now it's more throwing the ball than bowling. But so I had a period of time where I was a pretty good bowler.
Hold on, you said how many 300 games?
6.
Holy shnikes. Man, I can barely count to 300. You're bowling 600 or 300. What is going on right now? I definitely didn't know that about you. Okay, note to self, don't play Joe in bowling. Gotcha.
more chance though. So it's all good.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show. Obviously, you mean the world to me. That's number one. Number two is that I just always am learning from you whenever you're speaking, whenever we're together, I'm learning something new from you. So just thank you for what you're doing and what NADA is doing, as we're just coming off NADA right now as well. So just thank you for everything that you've done. And everyone, you know the drill at this point. Find a way to serve, whether it is opening a car door, whether it's a kind smile, just do something to better someone's life and bring a little bit more joy into their life today. With that, everyone, we'll see everybody next week.